Well, I've just read this little book actually to do a book review on it, and I'm not gonna lie, I chose it because it was interesting, but because it was also quite short. And I was it was an assignment I was given, and I was a little bit time pressured, and you know my love of old books anyway, so I got onto World of Books and I had to do something on Sigmund Freud, who was a very controversial character if you know anything about him. But a lot of his theories, philosophies, whatever you want to call them, are still in use today. And he was an incredible forward thinker. And there's a little book called What Freud Really Said, and it's actual transcripts of the man's words himself with regards to certain things and topics. And it's just so interesting because it highlights quite how interpretation of every individual has sort of run away and run against with Freud. And I'm not saying he didn't say some crazy things, because he did, but when you listen and you actually read the way he puts his words together and describes a lot of the things that he put forward as theories and the reasoning behind that, you know, they're very grounded and intelligent reasons, and the way he comes across is just not what you're sort of led to expect sometimes. But yeah, it was a really interesting book, and that was the conclusion I came to. I'm a bit of a Freud fan. My hopes for my book, I feel like the way that I work best with people, like teaching, healing, in whatever capacity or for whatever reason, is always best done one-on-one. I find I'm a lot stronger like that, or in small groups. But the hope for the book is to give all of that information and some of those sort of strategies out to as many people as I can, without having to do it personally, because obviously you can reach more people, you can be there for more people just by offering like that guidance. And I think as well the books are always lovely, because whatever book it is, you purely take that with your own individual interpretation. So you will pick up different things in it from another person, or think different things in it are useful to you. And yeah, I just think that the book allows that to be out there in that way for anyone that wants it, that either might not be ready to work one-on-one with me or might not want to. And it's just, yeah, it's a way of sort of getting that information out there to as many people as possible without having to, you know, speak to everyone personally, as is this to an extent, you know, and speaking and doing all the little videos and being on camera, because we all know it's not my favourite thing to do. But yeah, it's a nice way of reaching lots of people. And as I've sort of said, I think the main reason for putting that book together was all of that information being out there in different ways, but never put together like that. And it wasn't until I found that way myself that I realised that it was missing from being out there for people. And I put it together and put it in that book in a way that I wish had been available for me, because I know how helpful it would have been. Book 2. No, so I honestly, I've got to say, firstly, I never thought I would write a book, ever. It was never like one of my sort of plans or childhood dreams or anything that I thought that I would do. So it's a little bit unexpected, but something that I really enjoy, and it's a way of getting like a purpose out there. I think it's that's what it's served. But afterwards, after that is done and out there, I am going to find the most perfect location and build a retreat house, like a healing house. And my intention is to run personally 4 retreats a year. And they will all be for slightly different purposes, but all based on individuals that are wanting to better themselves in some way, or individuals that have specifically been through certain things. I will look at putting some of the retreats on as being quite targeted and specific for that. And yeah, just being able to offer like that very sort of just individualized healing programs for people in that retreat house. But I'm going to design every inch of it. Obviously, like, I've had a history in property and development, so being able to use that for this will just be so magic, and just using those skills for something that I'm really passionate about. So retreat house, and then I don't know, maybe a few all over the world, like in different locations for different things. But we'll see. We're going to focus on retreat house 1 first of all. It's been a very long journey here, and as I've sort of said, and without giving anything away, some of the stuff that is in the book, it's one thing having like these lessons or things that happen to you in life, and then it's like another thing being able to speak about things openly, being seen, being heard, realising that I'm allowed to have a voice and an opinion. They've been major lessons for me, and they've taken a long time to really settle in. And I think, being on camera, and speaking, just speaking in a way that you're out there, it's the ultimate test of having not necessarily fully healed those wounds, because it's not like I always find it easy, but being able to overcome them and be on camera and write those words that I think that have come from my beliefs and my experiences, I mean, that's, for me, that's been like so healing in itself. And it just gives you a lot of growth, a lot of courage, and it sort of enshrines that like self-belief. Oh, that's a good question. Obviously, like, I love to have a focus, and I lead a busy life. I do a lot of things, and I love my life. But ultimately, it may surprise a lot of people, but I am looking to share my life with someone. I'm ready and willing for that to happen. And as and when it's meant to, I think it will. It's, I think it's, you get to a certain point where you realise like the qualities that really matter in a partner. And the minute that they're there, I'm all in. I'm quite a complex individual, and I know you'll probably, the smile and the laughter when I say things like that, anyone who knows me sort of understands that. And I think that's the other side to fully discovering yourself and all of the different parts of you and embracing them. You become more and more unique, and some of the things that I really love, that I'm very passionate about in life, kind of contradict each other. And so, for example, my sort of spiritual side, a lot of the stuff that I do, that I've written about, all of that side, the way that I live my day-to-day life around that, and then my love of UK garage music and going out to the occasional rave, and just they don't really go together that well. But things like that, there's a few things as well. I love like my gymnastics and fitness and things, and I also love eating cake, huge amounts of cake. Not that I do that often, but occasionally. And yeah, it's just sort of, I understand that I'm quite difficult to understand, but they are all parts of me that I've taken a lot of work in rediscovering and sort of allowing them to be a part of me and play an active part in my life. So yeah, I think that I'm going to be attracting an equally complex individual as well. Well, I think my style and my tone is very unique. My writing, I've had a very academic background, and obviously when I did my law degree, I learnt to write in a very specific way. And I've fully rejected all of that and gone with writing in a way that I feel connects most with the reader. So it's not too casual, but it's very easy day-to-day language. So that I would say is where my style has come from me. But the author there's two things that have inspired me massively in my writing, and they actually link together in a very strange way. So Linda Goodman, who's my favourite author, she wrote a book in the 1960s, I think, called Star Signs, The Forgotten Codes of the Universe. That doesn't mean zodiac and star signs, even though she did that. It's more secret codes of the universe, all about energy. And this book, honestly, when I first got it, it took maybe a year for me to get through. It's a proper chunky book with that like proper typewriter font, bit smudged a bit, the odd mistake here and there, with all the pages that have turned brown. And I loved this book so much. I've probably read it 20 times and maybe more, and you can only get it secondhand. So every couple of months I buy one when they come up on eBay, and then I give it to someone that I think it's going to help, or who's going to like the book as even half as much as I did. And I ended up being able to give one to the second author that I will then talk about. And he inspired me in many ways, but mostly the courage to change and really put out who he was and who he'd changed to be, because he'd been massively in the public eye in a music career, and then had his, I don't know what he calls it in his book, it's Dark Night of the Soul, spiritual awakening, whatever you want to say, and has incorporated that into his life in a massive way now, and it influences his music. And yeah, so that is a book called What's Your Vibe, and it's by Craig David, who I'm a huge musical fan of, obviously UK garage music. And it taught me that you really can embrace those different parts of you that we were just, speaking about earlier. And yeah, to come out like with a profile as big as he's got, to sort of come out in the way that he did, just being like, this is me, like I've gone from a badass garage MC to a spiritual author, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is crazy courage. And that was a really big inspiration. And his book is just written in such a such a beautiful, simple, day-to-day kind of way. You know, the examples he gives, it's not like reading a book that talks about deep meditation on the top of a mountain. It's like really bringing that down to earth, down to what your day-to-day life is like in, you know, typical Western world and culture. And so, yeah, and he started that book when I started mine. Obviously, he finished this very quickly, and I'm 4 years later, I've just caught up. Yeah, I would like to say my word count's a bit longer, just as a point, but you know, he's yeah. So he was another huge inspiration in me actually writing the book, and also accepting like that range of different parts within me as being not just okay, but okay to put out there and to be authentically. So yes, thank you, Linda, and thank you, Craig. And yeah, do you want to know how I got the book to him?
Yes.
This was such a cool story. So I go to, whenever he's like round or local, I'll go to one of his concerts. Obviously, like I just love music anyway, as you know. And his performances are incredible. So anyway, I forgot to book the tickets for Bournemouth, which is where we were. And one of my friends who actually DJs for him on his tours got called up last minute. Again, long story, and managed to get me a ticket. But meanwhile, I'd booked... Where else had I booked? You know my lack of geography skills? Yeah, I booked Plymouth, which I thought was about 45 minutes away. And I got in the car, and I don't know how I got there on time. Oh, I'd planned to go there and have like dinner beforehand and do all of that, and it was just me. So I got in the car, and the sat nav was like nearly 4 hours, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, no, it can't be that. So I typed in the venue 3 different times, checked for accidents. No, I just got the location wrong. So I set off anyway. I was like, do you know what? Whatever. I'm just going to go. If I get a hotel up there, I'll get a hotel and come back the next day. But it was a really cool venue, and it just wasn't as busy as I thought it would be. And he had a support artist who was on first, and her name was Lost Girl. And she was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, but like young generation, rocking the UK garage music, and she just loved it. And anyway, she ended up, after she performed, coming to join the crowd and ended up dancing next to me. Okay, and I just said to her, I was like, you were amazing. How on earth are you so young, and where have you got like this love of a genre that was so not of your time? And so we had a big chat about that. And she was so kind and lovely. And I said to her, I said, look, I know you're in Bournemouth in like 3 days' time. If you're around and you want someone to show you around or show you where's good for lunch, whatever, just give me a shout, because I'm round all day, you know, just as I do, you know, working, but in my own time. And yeah, so she ended up messaging me and just saying, oh, look, I'm sorry, I can't come for lunch now because we've got whatever had happened. And I just said to her, I don't suppose there's any way you could get this book to Craig for me, because I think he would love it. So I'd obviously got a copy off eBay. I've got about 3 at home all the time. And I just write in it to everyone that I give it to. And so I actually wrote a little letter in this one. Yeah, and just she ended up giving it to him, and I'd put my Instagram at the bottom of the page, and just sort of said, you know, if you want to reach out, like, this is my Instagram, but don't, you know, I totally get it if you don't, kind of thing. And he followed me on Instagram the next day. I know, it was great. And yeah, and so he obviously got the book. She messaged me and said, oh yeah, I gave him the book, he really loved it.
Wow.
But it's like a little bit too special, one of those books to just put in the post and hope it gets somewhere. It's sort of one that if you can't actually personally put it in someone's hand, you want someone else to be doing that. But yeah, so we got a copy of the book. Wow, that's a really good question. Well, pretty much I've gone from studying the laws of England to the laws of the universe. I think people have like natural abilities in them for whatever reason or whatever talent that may be, and I just happen to find like academia something that I'm not going to say like easy. That's not the word, but I naturally get it. So I don't sort of have the struggle of understanding something, if that makes sense. You know, like a lot of academic work can make people feel, oh God, I don't want to look at that book, or I don't want to. And so I think I've just applied that to a lot of, or that ability to a lot of the knowledge of the sort of like the spiritual side of stuff, the healing, fuel, movement, rest, outside world, inside world, and those sort of 5 sections that make up the healing system. But what I was finding during my own journey was that learning all of this stuff only goes so far, and you really have to know how to not just understand it or learn it, or it's almost like the difference between learning the words and then just having them as a part of you. And those lessons or levels of learning are 2 very different things. And you know, it's very easy with academic work just to think that because you can, I mean, in the law degree, for example, remembering case names and dates, you know, it's, yeah, you get a legal principle from that case or something similar, but, you know, you can acquire this knowledge but not actually live by it. And again, like obviously all of the spiritual stuff or anything you take in, you have to really sort of connect with it. And it's that connection and that starts with understanding. You always have to understand it first in principle, but it's then actually learning to live as that, be it. And so, yeah, I mean, the first part of the getting the knowledge was pretty easy for me. Like I can sort of read and understand all the stuff, and then I was like, but why aren't I feeling any better? You know, like, why isn't my world like magically amazing now I've read that book and I understand it, you know? And so it was that journey of making those changes then to really live it. And it's like the difference between talking about it and doing it. That's it really. And it's I used to find myself like just wanting to talk about loads of the sort of spiritual stuff I was learning about, and you know, thinking, I don't know, not necessarily that I was helping people, but it's like when you talk about things a lot, it's almost like you're trying to reaffirm your own beliefs. And then you get to a point where you're like, I don't even need to talk about it. You know, it just is. And so it was, that jump made a really big difference for me. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with going around talking about things, discussing things, because it's a lovely way of connecting, you know, sort of, yeah, identifying people that are on the sort of same journey as you with regards to that. And obviously it does, like talking about things like that does help put things in your belief system, but when they're there, like they're there whether you talk about them or not. Oh, that's a lovely one. That's a good question. I think like anything spiritual is something that you connect with, you know, in a lovely way. And there is loads of music that does that for me, but I've got to say, if ever I just want to have really easy, good music that I connect with, I put on Bob Marley. Love a bit of Bob. It's just the messages in his music, you know, were beautiful, and for me, I can sort of hear how all of that music was put together, and I love it. It's very easy listening, and then there are some like sort of other just random songs where I love the melody that runs behind the songs. It's not necessarily the lyrics, or like a little part of a song where the melody just breaks down. And those bits for me are where I sort of really connect. I've already mentioned how I love that Tell Me It's Real, the Casey and JoJo garage remix, and just at the end there's this breakdown of just of that beautiful melody at the end. And there's another track again that it's so beautiful. It's called Wifey Rhythm, and it was the first song that made Tiny Temper sort of get noticed properly from the underground. And that is just the tones are so gentle. And Craig David did a track called 4 Times a Lady, which was one of my favourite songs, and no one really knows about it. I think it was released on, I got mine on a CD that came in the Sun newspaper, and you had to buy, I think it was 4 or 5 Sun newspapers, and you'd cut out the little tokens, and you had to stick them all together on this little card, and then you take the card into the newsagents, and then they give you a CD. And that's how I first got that track, was from a CD like that. Yeah, I haven't got it anymore because my car got broken into. This is ages ago. And yeah, unfortunately they didn't steal the CD, they broke it. I know. But yes, I'll get another copy of that song one day. But yeah, it's songs like that particularly just have a way that the sounds sort of come together, that's just really soft and gentle, and like the bit in a track that I really look forward to when I'm just in that mood and I want that connection. Darker days and darker times, I always used to fight them with like this strength that I would muster up, and it didn't do me any good, you know. And after a lot of sort of life changes and exploring how I was dealing with things, denying them or avoiding them was the worst thing I could do. So when, I'm not saying that I don't have times like that now, but they're much less, or they're much less frequent, or they're just not the same, because I've sort of honoured when they do come. So I will accept that darkness, and I used to try and pick myself up all the time, like, you know, you can't think like this, or you've got to be this certain way. And that for me just made things worse. So now I just try and listen to them, because I think they come with a message or a lesson as to something that's not sitting right with you in life. And if you can pick up on that and get that message as early on as you can, something's off balance, you know, for you personally. And so I just really try and listen to it. And I'm not saying I don't get them, but when I do, I don't try and pick myself up anymore. I sit with it. I give myself an amount of time, it's not like, you know, I would stay in that sort of state for what I would class as too long, and that can be different with each different thing that you're presented with. There's no sort of set time on it, but there comes a point where I feel like I've explored it enough and accepted it enough that I can then naturally release it, and sort of that brings me up. But it's definitely not through force. And that's a hard question to answer. Honestly, I think yes and no, and I will explain why. Being authentic is being sort of true to yourself and knowing what that is more than anything. But there are certain situations in everyone's lives, social situations, where we all put on a mask to a certain extent, and it's usually for the benefit of the people that we're with or around at the time. Yes, to an extent you can be authentic, you know, you can speak your truth, you can do all of that, but you know, are you going to speak your truth to someone that's perhaps asked you and you're in full knowledge that they're going through a really tough time themselves? You know, are you going to start talking about something that's bothering you in your life that's only going to add to their stuff? So I think you pick and choose to the better good overall. And I think that in itself is authentic. So very possibly the answer is yes, but in different ways. It's actually a very deep question, and I saw a clip of someone saying, you know, authenticity is just, you know, effectively a load of rubbish, because we're all different people at different times. You know, like the person that I show up, they were saying that the person that shows up to do an interview is very different from the person that, you know, goes home to their wife and kids, or whatever point he was making. But that's probably being authentic to your different parts. So I would say that to an extent you can be authentic all the time, but you know, you have to honour the different parts of yourself and other people whilst you're doing it as well. It's a huge thing to honour that what is authentic to you changes hugely. Like we change all the time, and yeah, staying true to those changes and where you're gonna be going and be led is the most authentic thing that you can do. Oh wow, okay. Big question. Stories and music, they're just like, they are so innate, and there's just something so lovely about both of them. I think stories particularly relay messages, don't they, of teaching, of whatever that may be, whether it's inspiring someone or you know, it used to be, I think, you know, keeping danger away, you know, knowing what to do and what not to do in situations is sort of where stories originated from. But we've all got our own stories, you know, and I think that when we have wisdom in them, you know, in certain lessons, that it's finding your voice to be able to share them is one of the most beautiful things that you can do. And I think music, like, there's so much going on in psychotherapy using the kind of activation of the right side and the left side, whether that's with the eye movement, whether that's with like the beats that you get from ear to ear, that sort of stimulation. And I've done it with tapping each side of my arms as well when I'm sort of doing things. But those like beats that we used to have in the music, you know, and like being around drum beats live, like you can see how good that is for the nervous system. And then like the dancing that accompanies music, and how beautiful and freeing and expressive that is. And I think stories and music are both, you know, incredible forms of expression, but they hold so much more than that in them. And I obviously love both. Huge fan of both. And yeah, I'm just, you know, I want to be involved in all of, you know, forms of expression that I can be through the guiding star system. And it obviously teaches that in many, many different forms. And I think the healing side of stuff is really supported by both story and music. I mean, I think stories allow a much more detailed message, because it's more about the details rather than just the sound. But music has this ability to almost not say much but still give you the message, and that's a little bit like hypnotherapy is very good at that. It sort of works its way in there and you don't know how or why, and that's because it bridges a part of the brain called the critical control faculty, CCF, if I've said that right. And that's like the guard between the conscious and the subconscious. And so I think like a lot of the messages of music get in the subconscious. And yeah, that's why we have to be very careful what types of music we listen to start with. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll do some music myself. I know I have a fear of singing in front of people, but I do love singing. So maybe the guiding star will have an album.
Yeah.
And obviously when I do the hypnotherapy recordings, they've all got like forms of music behind them. It's usually sort of clips of sounds of nature. But I can't see any reason why singing can't be incorporated into some of the hypnotherapy work that I do. There we go.
I like that.
There we go. Yeah, so hypnotherapy has both stories and music in it.